welcome back. I'm Kris. I'm going to be doing another Mr. Ballen. Let me turn this around. Another Mr. Ballen Lost episodes. I'm really liking these. I think they're pretty good. This one is... Sorry. This one is a secret creepy cabin discovered in North Carolina. It just has everything you want, right? So I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to hit go. Like if you like it. Subscribe if you like it. Don't if you don't. And no harm, no foul. Hope you enjoy this if you watch it. All right? Let's go. This is a story about Larry Davenport. Was originally paired with another story about a boy named Michael who went missing 8 days prior in the same location. Rowan Mountain, North Carolina. Michael and his family asked us to remove the video, so that's why you're hearing Larry's story now as a weird standalone story. Okay, I'm missing something, but that's fine. Props to him for doing that. That's great. To remove the person out of respect.
On July 17th, 1983, 8 days after Michael is found, another person goes missing in the same section of Rowan Mountain. And I've got to say, their story sounds an awful lot like Michael's. So on July 17th, 1983, Larry Davenport, who is a 20-year-old avid hiker, decides to head up to Rowan Mountain with a couple of his friends to go on a hike. They really liked the western side of Rowan Mountain. They were very eager to get up to the top where they could have a picnic before the sun went down. So they make it up to this section of the mountain where it's actually a campsite, and it's not that far from where Michael went missing. And there's picnic tables and there's little barbecues. You can put in charcoal briquettes and have your own little barbecue. They get up there and they set up their picnic on one of the picnic tables. And they're having a great time. They're joking, they're laughing. And at some point, Larry takes off his shirt and his shoes. And the weather was pretty good. Wasn't super hot out, but it was decent enough that no one thought it was odd that he was taking off his clothes and maybe kicking back and relaxing, enjoying the nice weather. Then at some point, out of nowhere, he stands up and he starts walking over to the tree line because they were in a bit of a clearing. And as he's walking over, one of his friends would later say that it seemed odd if he was going to relieve himself in the tree line that he wouldn't take his shoes because the risk of stepping on something and puncturing your foot's pretty high. It was only in retrospect that this...
If you're out in the mountains, yeah, I wouldn't want to go without my shoes. What if you got to run? What if there's a snake and it bites you between your toes? What if... I don't know what kind of creatures they have in North Carolina, so, obviously they don't have scorpions, but let's say they do. They got North Carolinian scorpions. Like, no. I'm not doing that. Oh, I wonder if he had socks on. I wonder if he didn't. Oh, what if he was stepping on rocks? Oh, no. That just sounds uncomfortable. I'm just going to get back to it. I could be making things up in my head.
His friends didn't think twice. He's getting up to relieve himself. He'll be back in a minute. After a few moments, when Larry did not come back, somebody turned around to see what he was doing. And they saw him walking in a straight line away from them, well into the forest. This is a thick forest. It's not somewhere you're going to go walking barefoot without a shirt on. And he is way into the woods at this point. The friends have this moment of shock. Even if he needed to relieve himself, he would have done it much closer to the edge. So they're staring at him, thinking like, this isn't really happening. He's gonna turn around and come back. When he didn't, somebody yelled like, hey, Larry, what are you doing? Doesn't turn around, just keeps walking. So they get up and they start walking over. They're yelling to him, expecting him to turn around. And then at some point, he's far enough away that they can't even see him anymore. So they start running into the forest, yelling for him to stop and to come back. But as they got farther and farther in and they couldn't find him, they began to get worried that they were going to get lost. And so they decide, after about an hour of just yelling for him and kind of peering around.
An hour? Wow. He got really far in there, didn't he?
hopefully get a look at him, thinking he might just come back because there was no explanation for this. They eventually called the authorities. Authorities are able to very quickly launch a massive search in this area, very similar to the search that was launched for Michael, except without military involvement. But it was just as many people, hundreds of people, scouring this area. He doesn't have shoes on, he doesn't have a shirt on. And so they're banking on the idea that even though he's walked off for some reason, he can't go very far. It's gonna take a minute, but they're gonna find him because he can't escape the search party. But he does. And
without shoes and a shirt in the mountains, like it's in the summer, but in the mountains you figure it still gets cold. So he's lost a layer of protection, well, 2 layers, shoes and shirt. That's uncomfortable.
after 3 days of not finding this guy, despite this massive effort, people are baffled. But on the 3rd day, a very strange but lucky break in the case occurred. 8 miles away from where the search is happening for Larry, a group of hikers called into police that they had seen a man walking around them wearing only what they described as a bed sheet. He was probably not wearing a shirt. They didn't know if he had pants on or not, but they could see that, you know, his shin down had nothing on it, and he had no shoes on, and he had this bed sheet wrapped around him. And he wasn't coming towards them. He wasn't threatening them in any way.
Terrible
He
picture.
just looked like there's something wrong with this guy. Somebody needs to collect this guy and see what's going on.
Where do you get the bed sheet
The police
from?
go over, and sure enough, it's Larry. When police got to Larry, he was visibly shaken, confused.
Yeah.
He didn't really even know why he was there. He didn't know why he had this bed sheet wrapped around him, which it would turn out to be a large curtain, not a bed sheet. He did have a few scratches on his body, but probably not as many as they anticipated.
Is there a curtain factory in the woods, in the mountains of North Carolina that we don't know of?
Him having, considering the distance he had covered, 8 miles through thick rhododendron thickets. He should have been covered head to toe in cuts, but he wasn't, but he had a few. So the first thing they did is they brought him to a hospital, and he was diagnosed with something called acute brain syndrome, which is a term that refers to a host of psychiatric conditions that are temporary and diffuse over time that are caused by head injury, drugs, or infection. Basically, he was totally mentally unstable,
Did
but
he have an infection?
it would get better over time. Once he stabilized a bit, investigators asked him, what happened? So Larry wasn't sure why he left his friends, but at some point after leaving his friends, he wound up at this abandoned cabin. And he describes the cabin, and he says where it is, and he said he went in the cabin and he didn't have clothes on, so he pulled one of the curtains off one of the windows and he wrapped it around himself. And he was there for a bit before ultimately leaving the cabin, and then he was discovered. And so
Why'd you
investigators,
leave?
they had a bunch of issues with this because, number one, how do we account for you traveling 8 miles? Because what you've just described is not an 8-mile journey. You're talking about a very short journey. In addition, where you described this cabin is an area that was heavily searched by the hundreds of people that did the search, and no one saw a cabin. And certainly if they had, they would have searched the cabin. It is the most obvious place that someone lost in the woods would go. There's no cabins in that area.
What?
So where was he? And where did he get the curtain from? And so just like the Michael Reel case, where the boy is found and he's healthy, and so everyone looks past the weirdness of his discovery and his story because he's alive, that's what happened to Larry Davenport. Very strange story. Don't know what you're doing walking around with a curtain on you, and I don't think that cabin exists, but you're alive, so we're okay with it. No one really did much research into the weirdness around these two stories. But David Politis and the Missing 411 team said it's pretty difficult to overlook the fact that in a very short period of time, 2 different people that didn't know each other, that were not interacting in any way, went missing in roughly the same area, Roan Mountain, North Carolina side, under the same circumstances. They suddenly got up and walked away inexplicably. There's no trace of them. Dogs can't pick up their scent. Then they show up and they're kind of confused about how they got there, but here they are. And then they describe the same cabin that they found themselves being drawn to and staying inside of for significant amounts of time before being found again. That seems like too much of a coincidence to just write off. So, I would like to hear what you think happened to these 2 people. Was the cabin a hallucination? And if so, how did they both evade such a massive search effort? Or was it real? And who was the person in the cabin with Michael? So that's going to do it.
That is so weird. Okay, so the Michael case is what he removed. And getting a gist of that was a little boy who basically the same thing happened. He just got up and left. But, okay, if it wasn't real, where'd he get the curtain from? And they didn't see a cabin. So was he when? Okay, so when he told them where he was, he must have told them the wrong spot. Maybe. I have no idea. But to go 8 miles without shoes and the shirt, like, that's just weird. Yeah, I don't know what to say. That's crazy. That's weird. I'm going to end it here because this is just weird. It does. I'm not understanding why someone will walk off. Like, that's where everything loses me. What made him walk off? What cabin did he must, okay, he came across, I believe, the cabin because he got the curtain and he wrapped it around himself. But I just think that he must have, he incorrectly said where he was in the woods. Is the only thing I can think of. But you would figure they would know where cabins are. So they would have checked him. And I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm just going to end it here because this is, if I keep thinking about it, it's just not going to make sense because I think, oh, okay, well, what about this? But then it doesn't make sense. The whole issue is why did he get up and leave the camp? Because I thought maybe he had an infection, but they would have checked him over when he got to the hospital. And if he came out all clear, then it must have been drugs. Well, they would have checked him for that too. I have no idea. I give up. This is going to bother me. I'm just going to end it here because this is going to roll around in my brain for a while. I hope you're as confused as I am. Have a good day, if you can.